Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rising Giant Incredible Journeys Behind podcast. Today with me is really special guest. It's not another football player. She is my boss. Literally my boss. She's probably one of the most badass women I've ever seen. She's huge inspiration for me, and she's a co-founder of Mercury 13 and owner of our club of FC Como Women. Victoire Cogevina Reynal. Thank you for Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for coming to the podcast.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for that very generous introduction. It does sound like I'm kind of paying you to say all of those beautiful things, but it is my honor, really. When you asked me to be on it, I've been following it. I've been watching your podcast, and I know it was a specific for players. I remember the first day that you came to Como, you told me all about it because I happened to be there. And I feel very grateful that you chose me to be the first non-player to be here. So I definitely don't know how to play football.
No, yeah, you actually, to be honest, you gave me a lot to think because I just saw, your dedication to women's football, especially. And I thought, okay, yes, I'm trying to promote the industry, but the industry is not just players. You actually, maybe, obviously, we are the main characters, but you're playing probably the next biggest part. You're the one who is actually seeing the potential in us and trying to invest in us. And I think that's the biggest compliment we can ever get. And I think that I'm not just speaking for myself, but for everyone. It's the biggest honor, and we're very grateful to have people like you.
Thank you so very much.
So you're a businesswoman. Why and how did you start it? Whenever I was looking up, I saw that it's kind of in your blood. Your mom was an agent. Your grandfather was a businessman. Was it because of them, or it's just something that you always wanted to do?
It's a great question. I think I've always been very driven since I was young. And since even when I was in school, I was fairly interested in the experience of being a woman, right? So, and that perspective and perception. I went to an all-girls school when I lived in Argentina, and they kind of raised us in a way to be very powerful and to occupy space. And I think my kind of early days as an activist, if anything, happened there. I gave the valedictorian speech at our high school graduation, and I read the speech that it happened over 15 years ago now, but I read the speech fairly recently, and it's something that I could have said today, which is kind of cool. But I think my interest in how women experience this world and how it can be improved, because there's a lot of work to make it better, has always been a passion of mine. And today I'm very lucky to have connected my profession with that part. I started my career in the fashion industry, so very different. I worked for magazines, so I had the Devil Wears Prada kind of experience, and I learned a lot. It's inspired a lot of the things that you probably can see today from the way that we were building the brand at Como. But that was really my first insertion into the world of business. And then one day my mother gave me a call that changed the rest of my life. She was a wealth manager turned football agent and had this wild idea of representing players in the MLS. And I had been a huge football fan my whole life. I had been a huge fan of my mother my whole life. And when she gave me this call, she's like, I want to build this agency. Why don't you come and you build it with me? And, I was in my very early 20s. I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I resigned on the spot. Moved to Miami to start working with my mom. And the rest is history, I guess. But it's been a long road, and one that I think I was always meant for, in a way.
You kind of feel it, you know, that's something that is your purpose. I feel like if we are truly in touch with ourselves, then you just know. Yeah, it's crazy. So that was, if I'm not mistaken, that agency was all women agency.
It was the first agency founded and managed by women in the sport of football.
And you had male players.
And we only represented male players.
How did that go?
It was, it really formed me because I think I learned a lot. And I was working with Latin American players in the MLS. So to contextualize, this was over 10 years ago. Messi wasn't in the MLS, and it was a very different kind of landscape. And in the US, you know, soccer didn't matter as much as all the other sports. And so imagine when, you know, you're speaking to a brand and you're trying to sell them a Latin American athlete that plays a sport that not a lot of people care about. There was quite a lot of challenges, which prepared me for this moment in a way, right? Of making sure that, of creating a market and understanding how to create that market and sell that market to people that were not used to buying it.
Off cameras, off microphone, you shared the story of your grandfather and, you know, like putting the first sponsor on the t-shirt. Was that kind of like what also helped you then working with the brands, selling the players as well, the way he started his things? Or
it's a good question. Look, I think football runs in my family's blood, the Argentinian side. So I usually say I'm half Greek, half Argentinian, 100% Argentinian when it comes to football. And it's really something, a passion that everyone in my family has. And that's how I was introduced to football, through my brother. So my brother was a real life hooligan, like actual real life hooligan. And he would take me to the stadium with him since I was 5 years old. And, you know, my mother was a fan. My dad wasn't, but everyone on my Argentine side was, you know, big football fans. And so was my grandfather. And, you know, the deal you're referring to with Maradona, it was something that I learned years later. But it makes a lot of sense that, you know, he was even involved on that side. And I think what I got from him is more the entrepreneurial spirit of just willing things into existence, if that makes sense, having an idea and then making them happen and figuring out how to do them. And he always had that. He started so many businesses in his lifetime, and he's a legend in Argentina for all of that. And I just grew up around it. My mother was also that in a way. So not only did I have my grandfather, but then I had a woman in my life that showed me that you could do the same.
Which I think is very important, you know, having the right role models, showing you what's actually possible. Especially, you know, now obviously I feel like it's getting better, but I don't think it was always like that, especially, you know, women in a men's field. Yeah, how is it? Like so you were part of the women's founded sports agency, and then the Gloria that you co-founded and was bought by OneFootball, where you were also vice president, right? Now you're in Mercury. So how is it? Like, what adversities did you face because you are a woman in predominantly men's field?
It's funny because I always reframed those adversities as my biggest advantage.
Good one.
And that is something that my mother taught me. Very early on when we started working in football, you can imagine that, you know, we would go to football clubs, a mother and a daughter, both blonde, having no relationship to football. And people were looking at us like we actually had lost our minds. You know, it was it was wild because we would get meetings with clubs only because they were so curious to understand what was going on. You know, it was just that, like that. And then we would go into those meetings and we were so underestimated. You know, they kind of mansplained us in ways, and they didn't think that we know what we were talking about. And there was so much underestimation. And I remember I was so mad about that. And I would come back and I'd tell my mother, like, how disrespectful, how are they going to treat us like that? You know, I've spent the last 6 months building this presentation. I knew exactly my numbers. I knew I could sell our players. I knew everything. And she would always tell me, she's like, you don't understand yet, but being underestimated that way is your biggest advantage, because all you need to do is say 3 smart things in a row and you'll already be above average for them. And it's something that, you know, now I kind of see it that way, right? I am surrounded by men all the time. And now, you know, I think I'm in a much more kind of female driven business because it's women's football, but I'm still surrounded by a lot of men. And to me, men have always been my allies. I owe my career to a lot of different men because they believed in me and they gave me a chance. And now, you know, my co-founder, my co-CEO is a man as well. And I owe a lot to him for working with me, and I learn from him every day. So I never kind of come at it from that perspective where it's like it's a disadvantage. I think it's a huge advantage that we gotta learn how to use. And most importantly, and it's something that I think I've developed more confidence around over the last maybe 3 years, I'd say, is that the perspective of a woman is very important and is very needed in this world, because it's a world that has been built by men for men. Women didn't really have a say in anything, if you look at it, especially not in football. So my voice today matters. Your voice matters. It is a world in which the voices of women, no matter where they come from, no matter where their background, their experience is, really, really, truly matters. And to me, it's my superpower.
Yeah, and on the end of the day, if we're looking from a business perspective, we are selling to 50% of the world as well, you know, because if you're only selling to male population, then you're leaving out, let's say, potential 50% of
the other half of the world. That's how I call it.
Exactly.
The other half of the world.
Okay, so you kind of stole my next question. No, it's fine. Already talking about the advantages, but would you say maybe, I don't know, like just the woman intuition and those things is also one of the advantages of being a woman in that field?
Yes, and I'll say this is, again, it's very present for me these days. So it's a good question, and I don't think I get to speak a lot about it publicly. So thank you for giving me the space. But I think that in the last, I'd say even 6 months, I've really been faced with that part of me. And how can I really utilize the things that make me a woman and make them okay? Because even in business, you know, it's been built for men. Everything has been built for men. Even the fact that there's AC in most places, in most offices, for example, and women just need higher temperatures because we get colder. You know, there's so many little details like that, and that bleeds into business. And, you know, I often work with a lot of men, and, you know, I sometimes feel like, do I have to be like them, or can I be myself? Mm-hmm. And myself, you know, you kind of got to know me over the last few months. You know, I'm someone that likes to have fun. I'm fairly informal for what you would think about football club owner. I like to make jokes, albeit most of them are not great. But you know, this is the way that I am. And then I also care. I also care a lot. Like, and that's how I justify everything that I do. I have a young daughter. I'm away quite a lot. You know, I'm sacrificing a lot of time with my family to do the job that I do. But I care so much about it. And I care about you. I care about the club. I care about building a sustainable future for it. And that shows up in business meetings too. And I think today I feel more confident in saying, I'm going to show that. And if you have a problem with it, then you can go somewhere else.
And it's your problem, you know.
And it's your problem, yeah.
Now, like, on that note, actually, like from my personal experience, I was surprised how approachable you are and how open you are. And it's crazy because, you know, like you're saying, maybe this at some point can backfire, but at the same time, my personal experience is like I can connect with the club, the values and everything that you're trying to build a lot more. Because I know you personally now. You are so open-minded, and you support us on so many different levels. Then it's not like, let's say, if at some point I'm faced with with the decision of should I stay or should I go, it's a lot harder, just because I'm part of something bigger now. I know people. I'm close to people who are building that. And I think this is
you're building it. I think that's the maybe something you don't realize, but you and every single one of your teammates are building this with us.
Yeah, I agree, but still, looking from a perspective of, you are the boss, the owner, still, because, especially as players, a lot of times you're looking from a perspective of, okay, am I playing, am I not playing, those things, and we are not really connected to the club to that extent. Especially I don't think I've ever met the owner of the club before, and I played for some very big clubs, So from that perspective, then decision, it's a lot harder to leave, for example, because you have to take that into account as well. So maybe you're doing it because this is how you are, maybe because you're a woman, I don't know, a woman, I don't know. But yeah, for speaking from a personal perspective, that makes a huge difference.
Well, I'm glad that you can appreciate it. It's my favorite thing in the world since I've started this company has been get to spend time with you guys. And I'm going to share a little story with you that I only shared with my co-founder and some of the people that work at Mercury. But the other day, we remember the call we did for We Are 8. And you were all on the screen and we're talking to you, and I had a moment where I was like a complete fun girl. I was like, oh, these girls are so cool. Like that's how I felt. And I was like, if I can feel this, the whole world could feel this. And I feel like this because I know you. I know your stories. I've asked you questions. I've been there. I've seen the struggles. I've seen the great times. And it's kind of wild. Like I look at all of you and I'm like, oh my God, they're so cool. Like a little girl that, or a little boy has that with a male footballer where they're like, look at they're their idols. And, to me, it's really my favorite part. I hope I never lose it because I really do believe that it's the best way to get everyone behind this vision and mission that we have that so much bigger than just the two of us or just this team. It really is much bigger. And hopefully in the near future, there's many more owners like myself, that it's not the one team that has the one. There's a lot of women going into business and there's a lot of women buying teams, which is great. And it's definitely the right type of owners because we understand each other. And, sometimes we have conversations that you can't have with a man, and that's completely fine. That doesn't mean that they don't serve a lot of other purposes, but sometimes, you got to have that thing, and hopefully what we're doing can set an example and show that it works.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. It's something that is just kind of like you said, an example for everyone else to just follow. And now when we are speaking about that, I did read about you, a Latin American who's redefining a soccer industry. So
it's a big title.
No pressure, by the way.
No pressure whatsoever. Yes.
No, but it's great. So again, speaking from my perspective, from my experience, I think you're doing a very good job.
Means a lot. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for being that. So you're a huge football fan. Have you never thought about playing?
No. I would lose all my credibility if you put me anywhere near football. I actually never played the sport. And by the time I could get interested in it, it was too late. I have no coordination whatsoever. I mean, those movements, I think you learn when you're very young and you can't teach them. I mean, I know you've tried to teach them to your girlfriend, and that's probably my favorite content ever. But it's really hard. It is really hard. So no, but in a way, I think it's also what drives me, because, you know, when I was young, my parents didn't really think that it was worth my time to play this sport or any sport, for that reason. I didn't really grow up playing sports. I'm not athletic whatsoever. And it's something that always missed in my life. It was a gap. And I really truly believe that if I had been a part of sports, of team sports, if, you know, I had been exposed to that, I would probably be in a much better place. Not that I turned up that badly, but, you know, like, I'm sure I could be better. And I certainly want that for my daughter. You know, I now, like, when I see she's 2 years old, I mean, she's very young, but when I look at the different hobbies, you know, it's ballet and like music class, and I'm like, what about the football? Let me put her in a football class and not repeat history, you know, like, let's make her. And she's been kicking a ball very well, which, you know,
Which you're proud of.
Hopefully. No pressure on her at all. But yeah, hopefully.
But would you say that you had interest, you were just not supported, or you were never exposed to that?
I was exposed to football because I would go to a stadium with my brother, and I was a fan, so I was in the stands, and I used to go to where hooligans go, that there's no bleachers, so everyone is standing up. And I was so young when I first started going that I couldn't see the pitch. I literally could not see the pitch because I was short. Yeah. And all I could see was emotions. I could see, like, how all these men around me were experiencing the game, and I could see how, you know, they were taking out all the anger from that week, or all the, you know, the emotions that they're not allowed to have anywhere else but in there. Mm-hmm. They would hug and kiss strangers, they would cry, they would laugh, they would have all this range of emotions. And I would, like, look at them and really kind of understood from a young age the power of football. And, you know, I don't think I've ever was interested in kicking the ball myself. I was more interested in being a fan and understanding how football had such a deep impact in my life. Like, it really changed my life. I know it changed yours, but in very different ways, because I really never played. But we still, you know, it became a huge part of our identity. And I think as I grew older, I started, you know, liking fashion and makeup and heels and all these things. And the girls that liked football didn't like any of those things. And so I started having this whole identity crisis where it's like, football is my thing. Like, in the worst moments of my life, when I was young, my parents divorced, when I was bullied at school, I would go to that stadium and I'd feel like there was something bigger than me and all of these problems. And it was so important in my life. It was like my church. It still is until the day of today. My happiest place in the world is that Racing Stadium in Buenos Aires. When I go there, and now I'm invited and I'm an ambassador of the club and I do all this, like, more business oriented things. But at halftime, I take off my heels, I put my sneakers on, and I tell them I'm going over there with all the hooligans. And everyone always is like, why, it's no. I'm like, they've known me my whole life. I know them. You know, it's my brother. Like, I'm going to go there. And I guess, you know, to answer your question more specifically, I really never was interested in playing, but I was more interested in trying to make it that every woman in the world could feel what I felt without having to fight so much.
Yeah, no, but like you said, I totally agree with the power that football has, sports in general, but I feel like football specifically. And I think that if, especially now, like women's football, we can really change people's lives, and this is part of this podcast is that, you know,
Rising Giants.
Yeah,
I love the name.
All right, so you're part of the Common Goal, and I was actually last year, I was at an event in Barcelona as a speaker, as a part of the common goal as well. And I had one businessman at the end of the event asking me like, so why should I invest in women's football? Typical. I gave him my own answer, but now that answer, that question, I'm
You're
giving
asking
to
me?
you. Like I'm asking, what would you say if a businessman shows up and says like, oh, why would I want to invest in women's football?
That's been my job for the last 2 years, convincing people to invest in women's football. Look, I'm going to give you the business answer and then I'm going to give you the real answer. Business answer, I think women's football and women's sports, generally speaking, is a very unique opportunity that confluences a cultural moment and the ability to generate revenue. And it's very, very, very few times that you see these two things come together. In our generation, we haven't seen it. So it is really that unique. And when I talk about, the cultural piece, it's really connected to a gender equality movement. This is what's happening. Women's sports, women's football is a gender equality movement. It is perhaps the most powerful gender equality movement that we are going to experience as humans in our lifetime. And is one that is so much more powerful than any of the ones that we've had until now. And the reason why is because it's a very positive movement. It is not about protesting, even though some of it involves it, because of course you need to explain and shine a light where things don't work to fix them. Mm-hmm. But it is not like Me Too. Me Too was a very important movement, but a very sad one at the end. It was a lot of women raising their hands and saying, this happened to me too. And it was so sad to see how many women had been a part of it. Mm-hmm. And when you look at women's sports, it's the complete opposite, because it's about taking that empowerment back and saying, we are going to do what men have been doing for the last 100 years, and we're going to do it really, really well. And guess what? There's uneven expectations, there's double standards, and there's all the things that we suffer with in day-to-day society. It happens in women's football as well. So we are in a way 100-year-old startup, because we've been around for so long, but this part has never been invested, and people immediately ask questions around, well, the audiences are not there, and it's not generating revenues, and the salaries, and this and the other. We're like, man, we just got started. Like, what? It's 100 years ago, that was also the case for the men. Mm-hmm. Like, they were nowhere near. So from a business perspective, again, I think the intersection of both the cultural with the business piece, and the idea that now you can target a female consumer in this whole ecosystem is probably one of the biggest financial opportunities of this generation. Women are spending more and more and more and controlling more of that decision power. And the brands, the products, and the companies that understand that make women feel seen, that make women feel a part of it, are going to be the ones that are going to win. And in the last 5 years alone, there's so many companies that have done that. Bumble, Skims, huge brands that focused on women. And guess what? Women thank them back by consuming their product. And I think that the point that we make with our investors is that women's football is early enough that you can come in as an investor, because you want to come in early. Like, if everyone is investing in it, it's too late. Mm-hmm. So it's early enough. And this is the potential. You can have the other half of the world consuming this. And that's wild. Look at what happened with the men. Men's football is a gigantic business. I bet that the women's side of football is going to be much bigger than the men's.
Really?
Well, I'm betting my whole career in it.
It's crazy. I love it. I love the idea. And I believe that as well. Because I think that whereas I feel like still the biggest difference, and I'm not saying, you know, they're not passionate, but we are so passionate about it. We are doing it without being paid for it, literally. You know, like obviously, yes, we do live. I can say I'm a professional football player, but in reality, I still have to think what I'm going to be doing in a few years when I'm done with my career. Or even, you know, when I'm talking with some girls who are, let's say, from Germany or some other countries. When I spoke with Julia from Sweden, she said girls in Sweden still have to work. They're playing in the first league. They're playing, but they still have to work if they want to just, you know, survive day to day. And it's one of the best leagues traditionally in Europe or in the world, actually. So we have the passion. And I feel like people who started to watch women's football can feel that.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only the passion, but the resilience.
Yeah.
This is what this podcast is all about, is that resilience. And I think that is something that is universal. It's not even, it's definitely ingrained in the female experience. We need resilience to be a woman in this world. That's it. Since you're a young girl, you know, until you die, you have to be resilient. But I think it's also part of human nature. You know, it's learning how to be resilient and how you get up when you fall. And I think that's what makes it so magnetic even to men, right? They see you and they see stories of resilience that are inspiring to them because you show them that despite everything, in spite of everything, you still made it and you're still there and you're still playing. And the leaps, it's wild because now it's every time the stakes are higher and higher and higher. And I can tell you, like, even from Champions League finals, like, you know, it's a more like practical, but the three last Champions League finals have been wild. Like, it is insane. That is the future. When you go there, and I'm doing a huge plug for UEFA, you're welcome, you taste the future. You really do, because you see women doing their best on a global stage with packed stadiums to the brim with a completely different fan that is not there to heckle, is not there to boo, is not there to be violent, but is there to have a good time and to really show the world how women need to be treated, which is with the same exact respect that men have had for centuries. And that's the magic of women's football.
Yeah,
and that's
I
why
agree.
it's so magnetic.
I agree. And you were talking about resilience. And I feel like we came to the point where, yes, we are resilient, but now we are demanding the respect. We are demanding to be seen. We are demanding to be, you know, valued. And I think this is also another step that is right now.
Yeah, and it's not only demanding, you deserve it. You've earned it. That's a reality. That respect is earned. You know, it's not, you have to earn it. And I think you have more than earned it. And now it's time to occupy some space, you know, do some scary things, ask for what you need and what you want, and really try to take the next step, which, you know, I see with the older generation of players, such like yourself. You've been around for a while. Like, you've kind of seen things were very different. I mean, this is what you talk about all the time on this podcast, and it's not like now it's so much better, everything has changed, we're great. No, we still have so much work to do, but there's been a huge amount of change even in the lifespan of your career. And I think I hope, and again, I'm not an athlete, so this is where I try to put myself in your shoes, but I hope that you see that all the fight and all the pushing and all the resilience and all the bad times were worth it, because you literally created a path for younger players to have it much easier. I mean, I see it with you and Zara all the time. Like, I kind of see this, you guys are in the same, playing in the same national team from the same country, and she's very young, and, you've been around for a while, and it's kind of like Zara cannot be Zara because you were you for a very long time.
Definitely.
So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for acknowledgement. I used to say, oh, I wish I would be 10 years older, younger, or 15 years younger, dropping into that moment already when it's already kind of like done or very much on the way. But now when I step back and I look from a different perspective, I'm like, no, I'm proud that I've been part of the whole change, that I've experienced everything. And not just from a football perspective, it changed me as a person. It gave me so much, and it's great, to be honest, to experience everything. From nothing to, not gonna say everything, but to a lot better. And it's exciting to just think of what can still come.
Yeah,
exactly. Do you think that now? You said like you've been doing that for 2 years now, intensely. Is getting easier or no? Since the women's football is getting better or more?
Man, no, it gets harder. It gets harder. It gets more competitive, and Mercury as a company was always built and was born to be the first and to be the innovator and to be the one that pushed the boundaries even more. And with that comes a lot of responsibility and a lot of pace, which is something that I've learned from the amazing team that we have at Mercury. We work with some exceptional world-class talent, and they're the ones that are every day with the same purpose, setting the pace and pushing the boundaries and making sure that we do and make the most of this incredible opportunity that we have in front of us. But it only gets harder. You just, I think, get more used to it, I guess. And for me, on a personal level, the beginning of this company, I had a newborn, and I was becoming a mom for the first time, and it was wild. And I often describe it as the dumbest thing I've ever done, which was to start a company and have a baby at the same time. It was, the world is not prepared for that. I was not prepared for that. Like, it was a lot of pain, and I'm very proud because I believe that even if things were to end tomorrow, for whatever reason, what we did is already exceptional and important, and hopefully we've already inspired a lot of people to follow suit. But it was not easy, and if it wasn't for my co-founder, if it wasn't for our investors, and it wasn't all the people that have been around and in my corner for the last decade or so, this would not be a reality. And it's important to talk about it, because I know that sometimes, like, from the outside, things can look like, Mercury got all this attention, and my Instagram might look really good, and my We Are 8 profile might look very good. But the reality is that in the background, there's a lot of work, and there's real human beings that make real sacrifices with their families, and with their own time and their own health. And, I think we're all so deeply connected to our purpose that we don't suffer it. We suffer it, but we don't really feel it in the end, because we know that what we're doing has an end goal, and that we have this huge responsibility, because also if we don't do things well, we then become, it wasn't worth investing in women's football type of thing. And that haunts me. Like, it's awful. Like, it's like, it's a lot of pressure. But it's been the ride of a lifetime that I know is just getting started, and one that every day, no matter the outcome, I'm so very grateful. And one that I see more and more people getting around the table. And it's something that I've shared with my teammates as well. But every time we're in a meeting and there's more people around the table, and smarter people and stronger people and bigger brands and, more money and like more. And I'm like, wow, this was 2 years ago, an insane idea I had when I was 8.5 months pregnant. And I should have not been having ideas. Like, I should have been trying to give birth to a baby. It's like, but I think at the end it's such a important mission that we have, that it's just created this movement, if I humbly can call it that.
Wow, it's crazy. Well, obviously now we spoke a lot about Mercury already, but let's just assume that whoever's watching that podcast has no idea what Mercury 13 is. What would you say to someone, like, in a simple way? What is Mercury 13, the purpose, and like what are you trying to do?
I'm gonna say 3 things about Mercury 13. 1, Mercury 13 is here as a multi-club ownership group. So that's a very kind of classic term. We acquire and operate women's football teams only. So we don't do other sports, neither we do the male side. So it's only women's football, with essentially 2 goals. 1, it's financial sustainability. Understanding how to build these teams into viable businesses. Hopefully one day, profitable businesses. Because that's what they need so desperately. And in a more kind of personal way, it's what women need desperately. We need financial independence. We need to make our own decisions. If we don't have the money to make those decisions, someone else is going to make them. This is what's been happening to women's football for the longest time. Someone else had the power of decision. So the first and most important thing that we're doing is really trying to build that financial sustainability with every club that we acquire and put in our portfolio. And then the second piece, which is very connected to the financial sustainability, is understanding the consumerism of it. What drives the consumerism of women's football? What drives the audience growth in women's football? How do we create more women's football fans? And we have a big bias on the female audience, because we believe that this is the audience that has been undertapped for the longest, that has a lot more spending power and a lot more potential than anything else. And so that is, in a gist, what Mercury 13 does. And the third thing is the name. So I think only if you Google, or you're a big space nerd, you'd know that back in the 1960s, there was a group of 13 women that wanted to become the first female astronauts to go to the moon. And they had to train privately and did the same amount of work that the male astronauts were doing in terms of stress testing and all of the different type of preparations that you need to go to space. And then after 10 years of this, they presented this mission to NASA. And NASA automatically declined the mission on the basis of their gender. Wow. They were women, and because they were women, they were not good enough to go to the moon. And that was the end of the story. If those 13 women had gone to the moon in the 1960s, the trajectory of gender equality would have looked completely different. Women would have known that they belonged not only in the kitchen.
Everywhere.
They belonged everywhere. And we believe that women's football is here to rewrite history. It's here to right that wrong. And so we call this company after them and in homage to them.
That's I mean, I have goosebumps. Look at that. I don't know if you can see that, but
I can see that.
yeah, you can see that. Wow, like it's just like such a great story, and you really do have. I feel like a very, very, very clear purpose, and I really hope that you succeed. And I'm honored to be part of that. Really, never in my life coming from Slovenia, I thought that once I'm gonna be part of such a huge thing. So thank you again for doing it.
You are the reason why we do what we do. And it is very, very important that we work together to get it done. This is the biggest disconnect. It's not the players over there and the ownership over there. There's a lot of problems to fix. There's a lot of work to be done. And people in a boardroom will never understand your experience. And that is a problem. And it cannot be that way.
No, yes, I agree. And I really love the way you're emphasizing that togetherness. But, from my perspective, it's always been kind of like players that were fighting and we were not really heard. So it's actually refreshing to have that relationship. But at the same time, like, we're still getting used to it. So maybe it's going to take us a little bit of a time. But yeah, it's great, to be honest. It's new, but it's great to have such a support. FC Como woman. Why Como? How did you find that small place in the earth?
Here we have.
Coming from Argentina.
I've been trying to position the logo every time with the camera. The merch is online and available if you want it. Como. Como was a very unexpected choice because of the league. We were very determined from the beginning of Mercury to build a portfolio in Europe because we saw the opportunity in Europe. And of course, in Europe, you have the English league, you have the Spanish league, you have leagues that are a lot more developed than the Italian one. And so I think when we announced that we had bought Como, it was kind of oh, wow, okay, that was unexpected. And the reason why we did was that it really ticked every single one of our boxes. We had received hundreds of different clubs around Europe and around the world when we announced that we were going to build, Mercury. And we had seen quite a lot, I'll say, by the time that we saw Como. And then it really clicked. And I think it clicked for many reasons. Firstly, because we saw a path to financial sustainability here, because the commercial potential of this project was so good. It's one of the most iconic locations and destinations in the world. It's in a league that plays against some of the biggest brands in football every weekend. And most importantly, it was an independent club. So it was one of those very rare occasions where you had an entire club that was only dedicated to women. It was almost like a utopia in Italy. And most importantly, I think the connection with Stefano, with the president of the club, who was the original founder of the club. This was a man that 6 years ago, he bought this club in the 3rd division. Imagine being an Italian man buying a women's football team in the 3rd division 5 years ago. I mean, it gotta be insane, basically.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right? And he did it, and he managed to build something exceptional, honestly. Something that made us fall in love with the club and with him in a matter of minutes, really, because you could tell that he saw something here before anyone did. And most importantly, he had the self-awareness of saying, I can this is how far I can take it. And I need now help and partnership to take it to the next level. And that's how we came into the picture. You know, we had a lot of conversations. It helped that Mario, my co-founder, speaks Italian. I understand most of it, but I don't speak it. And, you know, it was conversations, discussing, talking, and then sharing with him what vision we had for this club, how we would change the crest and the colors, and how we would turn it into something that the football world had never seen before. And how that would help us then in return attract more sponsors and do work that would, you know, generate more revenue, so that we could then reinvest everything on the pitch and build a stronger team, and then eventually get to a Champions League, which, you know, it's a thing, is the dream of all of us. And I know it's the dream of Stefano. It's the dream that we always think of, and we truly believe that Como has all it needs to get there. It's going to take some time, and football can be ruthless. We've seen it this season. We were so close, and, you know, it's one match and then it's over. And so we hope that, you know, we're going to get more chances in the future, but we need to think about that financial sustainability, which is something that we had the opportunity to do in Como, and really build something that, you know, is just getting started, but has gathered a lot of attention, which is great. We're doing a lot of things a little bit differently. We're making mistakes,
which is normal,
which is part of it. And I think those mistakes need to become lessons that we then, you know, never repeat again, or can find better solutions for. And, you know, our plans is to continue growing this portfolio. There's going to be more Comos in it, even though Como is always going to be the first baby.
Speaking about that, is it hard? You said that you had like hundreds of clubs that wanted to be part of it, but in reality, what you're looking for, is it hard to find a club that is maybe already in the first league somewhere, but it's only women's?
They're the minority.
Or are you willing to invest even in like some lower leagues somewhere?
I think we are pretty open in the division, in the tier. And I think we're also open in investing in integrated clubs, right? So a club that perhaps has a men's and a women's team, and then essentially carving out the women's team from it. There's only one precedent for this, which was Lyon. And, you know, it's something that I believe and I predict it's going to happen more and more, because the reality is that it's just a structural problem where men's club, or clubs that traditionally have been built off the back of the men's team, are not well placed to really grow the women's team. Because it requires very different things. One is a very mature business, the other one is a startup. And so it's not even like a men versus women thing, or men are better than women. It's just a business maturity thing. And so I think we're going to see a lot of clubs in the next few years not get rid of their women's team, but find the right partners for their women's team, so that they can continue to grow it, obviously under a shared brand, because they're going to play for the same crest.
So pretty much that would also mean like some huge names as well, if they would be willing to do that.
Absolutely. Great.
That sounds interesting as well. All right, so you're United Nations woman speaker. You are ambassador for many different things, like women's in sports tech. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Yeah. This you are advocating for resettlement for Afghan women. You are Common Goal Board. Feels like you are making a lot of difference in people's life. What does that mean for you?
It's a responsibility, and it's the best part of my day, always. Because through all those organizations, I get a very unique platform, and one that I don't think at the beginning I fully appreciated. But then I remember this girl came to talk to me on a plane. I was flying somewhere, and she came to my seat and she said, "Hello, Victoire, I'm so sorry. You don't know me, but I saw you talk in this conference, and you have no idea how much you've inspired me. And I've chosen to like pursue a career in football because I saw that, if you could do it, then I could do it. And so I just wanted to say thank you, and have a good flight." And I was sitting there, and I was young. I was 25. It was just like at the beginning of everything, and I was like, wow. You never know who you can touch, who you can inspire, and what those people can end up doing. And to be honest, that's what my mother did with me. I mean, whether she knew it or not, whether she knows it or not, Mom, if you're watching, you really showed me and you empowered me to be my own boss, to be my own person, to occupy space, to want things for myself. And, sometimes you're not as lucky. Maybe you don't have a mother like that, and you don't have those role models around you. And when that happens, then, the potential of your life goes down the drain. And to me, any of the advocacy work that I do, which now I feel with Mercury, every day is an advocacy day for me, it's really to have that impact, and it's really to be able to maybe become that role model. And I take it very seriously and with a lot of responsibility. And I think it's also the reason why I'm informal, and I wear I don't know if you can see my pants, but I'm wearing really fashionable pants because I love it, and it's fine. And it's okay. And I'm warm, and I hug people, and I do things that maybe it's not expected of me, but I was not expected. I'm a 33-year-old woman that owns a football club. Was that expected?
So cool.
No.
It's so cool when you say it.
It is cool. Of course it is cool, but it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. And I guess this is like what I my point was, that is just, I want to show it all. I want to be able to be vulnerable, and to show what it takes, and to show that it's possible. Because all of this, if you asked me 10 years ago, I never thought it was going to be possible. Never in a million years. Even if you told me that this was going to be my job, and I'm pretty crazy with my dreams and I'm very ambitious, I would still have said, the world is not ready for that. And here we are. So,
Crazy.
The sky was never the limit.
Great. I love it. Actually, it happened to me last week when one of my teammates in the national team said, Dominika, you have no idea how much good you're doing. And, those are the moments, like the girl that came to you, that I feel like are really, worth. You give everything that you gave, it's coming back.
Mm-hmm. And even if you touch one person,
well, you already changed so much, because that person's gonna touch another one, and so forth. You have a daughter. How are you? You kind of touched on that a little bit, but how are you balancing that mom life and being a badass businesswoman, an owner? Is she probably a huge inspiration for you as well?
Absolutely. I feel like when she starts speaking, she's gonna charge me a salary at this point, because I speak about her a lot. And but yeah, she's a huge inspiration, and I didn't really know it until I gave birth to her. And I had been an advocate for women since I was in high school, obviously. and it was something it was just in me. It was like, kind of my purpose in a way. And I learned that later in my life. But the second that they gave her to me and I put her on my chest and I looked at her, I was like, okay, this makes sense. I was preparing my whole life for this moment because now I have a daughter that I have the responsibility of finding ways to make it better for her. And this is how I do it. And Mercury is my way of doing that. And it comes with a lot of sacrifice. And, you know, the people at Mercury, we have another 3 moms actually. They're all moms, the women that work at Mercury. And 3 of us have very young daughters. And
what a coincidence.
I know.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
I know. And I think, you know, we all kind of look at each other and really understand that what we do is really for them. And you know, it's something that I can't even explain. It's natural. It's what you want. It's like, it's motherhood. You wanna do this thing, and sometimes it looks very different from woman to woman. What are you gonna do, no? And for us, it's expressing it this way. But again, I think that without a team, of which I'm very, very honored and very lucky to have some of the best around me, and a support system, you can't do it. I have an incredible husband as well that doesn't get as much credit as he deserves, but he's someone that, you know, he is the first person I told him about Mercury 13, and I was this pregnant. And he was like, yeah, I know better than getting in your way. Like, go for it. Do whatever you want. I'm here. And he's been here in the great moments, and he's been here in the very tough ones. And he's really, really supported me in that way. And I think that that's the only way that in the end you can get it done. Now, do I have room to improve? Can I do it better? For sure. But I think I take it day by day. And, you know, today I might not have been the best mom in the world, but I did something very important at work. And, you know, tomorrow is a new day, and let's see what happens.
I think that, you know, Charlie will be very, very, very proud to say that you're her mom. So,
do you remember when I brought her to the hotel and she met all of you guys? It was literally the best day of my life.
She's you can tell she's your daughter. Like, she's very outgoing. No problem being with us.
I know. She went with whoever grabbed her hand. I was like, okay, cool, bye. She's very independent. It's good.
Yeah. It's great, and it's, you know, it's a good reminder for us, you know, to have her around as well, because she is a future generation. You know, not just Zara, but
yeah,
even like that's further
true.
Down.
That's true.
All right, you mentioned before you have big dreams. So what are your dreams?
My dreams. They're I've always had very big ambitions, and I think I've, with time, you know, really pushed myself to make the sky not my limit. And I've really, you know, thought, what could I do? What else could I do here? And I don't share this very often because it sounds kind of wild, but it looks like you've kind of have an idea there, or you know a little bit. But I think that women's football is going to become so big, and is going to become such a big part of the ecosystem and the business of football, that a governing body like FIFA is going to need a female president at some point.
I love it already. And you didn't even say it yet.
And, you know, maybe it's me. Who knows? And many, many years from now, I'm still young and it's still early in my career and I have a lot to prove. But I really do believe that it's going to get to that point. And, this year something really important happened that made me even more confident that maybe one day I could reach that. And that was the Olympic Committee having a female president. And it happened. In 100 and something years, there's been only 8 presidents. And the 8th president is a woman.
It's crazy. I love it. And what I admire the most is the courage to speak about it. Not just, have it in your mind and kind of like keeping it for yourself and just kind of protecting yourself as well from, all the naysayers. I think it's very important. And I think it's, it says a lot of you and how much you believe in yourself. And I think that's the most important thing here. You are first who has to believe in that and in yourself. So props to you. And I really, really wish that this happens. And I'm proud to share that moment right now. And that you said that you announced that you're speaking that into existence on my podcast.
Exactly. This is it, right? You asked me my biggest dream, and I know this is my biggest dream. And what goes in my brain, the first thing I was like, I'm not going to share that. It's the craziest thing that could potentially say. And the reality is exactly what you just said. The first and only person that needs to believe in you is yourself.
Exactly.
And if you don't have that, and by the way, a lot of days I wake up and I don't believe in myself. But I have a husband that is crazy in love with me and believes in me more than probably I ever will believe in myself. I have an amazing family. I have an incredible team. And I have a lot of people that remind me when it's tough. But the reality is that it's my responsibility. They can do it once in a while, but every day it's me. So I kind of push myself and I share this, even though it's not an easy thing to share because I get nervous when I say it. Not because it's a crazy thing. It's more because I know the amount of work it's going to take. And I know that today the world is not ready for that. And for the world to be ready, there's going to be a lot that needs to happen. But hopefully I inspire you and anyone listening to this episode particularly to speak their dreams loudly. And if they don't scare you, then they're not big enough.
Wow, that's very well said. And as you said, I think it's so important, and I get that a lot. I'm lucky enough to have that mirror and that support as well. But like you said, you are the only limit to you is you, and the only one who can believe and make it happen is you. And it's saying it, it's making a commitment to yourself as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing dreaming about it in silence, and the other one is just putting it out there. It's a commitment now. You have to go
and doing
after
the
that.
work. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Well, Victoire, thank you for your time. Thank you for saying yes. I feel like I'm very privileged to know you and to be able to be part of your story, our story right now. I really wish you all the best, especially with this last one. I can wait to see it happen, and I'll be very proud standing there and say, like, I knew it. So, well, good luck with everything, and I can wait to see for everything that it's coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It really means a lot. It's not about rising giants, I think. It's about standing on the shoulder of giants. And here today, I stand on your shoulders. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I think the beautiful thing about it is that we just, when we're powerful on our own, but when we join forces, we're unstoppable.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.